This is a demonstration about how to create a dual image display photo in Photoshop. First, you need to open your Photoshop program and then open two pictures that are strongly related to each other. For this demonstration, I've chosen two different flowers that I'm going to work with. The next thing that you need to do is to check the image size to make sure that both of them are exactly the same size. So I'm going to go to image size and document size, and I see my width is 10.667 and my height is 8 inches. So I'll say OK. Then I'll check my other picture. Image size, width 10.667 and height 8 inches. So even though they look different on my screen, they're both the exact same size. I'm going to zoom in on this one just to show that they are the same. All right, the next thing that I need to do is to prepare for my setup. So I'm going to go to either picture. I'm going to start with this one since it's showing right now. And I'm going to go to canvas size, and I'm going to double the width of this. So I'm going to go to 21, I'm going to say 21.3. I'll leave the height the same, and I want my canvas extension color to be white. I want to move my anchor point here to one side. I'm going to move it to this side and say OK. Now I'm going to press Control- so that I can see the whole document more easily. Okay, the next thing that I need to do is to prepare to slice this image up into segments. So to do that evenly, I'm going to turn on my grid. First thing I'm going to do is go to View, Show, Grid, and you'll notice that this grid the lines are tiny and it's sort of hard to see against the flower. So I'm going to go to Edit, Preferences, Guide, Grid, and Slices, and under the Grid section I'm going to change my color to something that will stand out more clearly. In this case, maybe a dark blue would stand out pretty strongly. And then I'm going to change, I want a grid line every inch, but I want a subdivision every 2. So I'll say OK. All right. Now I can see clear segments on here that I'm going to start to cut up. The first thing, I will select my marquee tool, and I'm going to cut off this little stray end here and just delete it. Just to clean everything up. And I am going to clean it to white. Say OK. I will deselect. I'm going to select the next column over, and notice I'm making my marquee fill up that whole column, top to bottom. I can hit Control-C, or I can say Edit Copy. I can hit Control-X or say Edit Cut, and I can hit Control-V, or I can say Edit Paste. Now I'm going to take that slice that I cut out and move it all the way to this first whole column. Now I'm going to click on the background section, and I'm going to repeat the process for the next segment here. Select the whole column, Edit Copy, Edit Cut, Edit Paste, and move that over. In order to save time, I'm going to pause the video at this moment so that I can cut up the rest of the segments, and then I'll pick up in a few minutes. Okay, you can see that I'm about halfway through the process, but I wanted to stop and show you a few things that could go wrong, just so that you can see what to do and how to deal with that. If I select a column using my marquee tool and say edit copy, and it says could not complete the copy command because the selected area is empty, that's because at the present time I'm working on a layer but not the background layer. So I'm going to click OK, then I'm going to click on the background layer, and now I can say edit copy, edit cut, and edit paste. When it pastes, it just drops it randomly onto the picture area. You need to take the arrow tool and move that into position so that it snaps into the column. Notice that I'm leaving a space between columns. You'll see what will happen in that space later. It's important that when you move this, that you don't just drop it anywhere in the column. It has to line up top to bottom, side to side, and fill the column. All right, I'm going to pause again and finish this selection process. When you get to this stage of the process, there's another problem that might seem to occur. I'm going to click on the background layer, make sure I'm in the right section, use my marquee tool, select my area. I'm going to hit Control-C, copy, Control-X, cut, Control-V, paste. Now, it's difficult to see where that pasted piece is. If I take my arrow tool and just move my arrow tool, I will see that new piece move. So I'll do that again so that you can watch. Make sure I'm on the background. Select my column, Control-C, Control-X, Control-V. Again, it seems to be hidden, or it looks like nothing happened, but actually there is a column that got pasted. It's just sort of hidden behind the other ones. Again, make sure I'm on the background layer. Control-C, Control-X, Control-V. Move that layer over. I'm going to pause again and finish. When you have finished with all of your cuts and copies and pasting, you should have something that looks like this. Your flower image is now spread out, and there are spaces in between each segment. I'm going to go to the other picture now, the yellow one, and I'm going to say View, Show, Grid. I see my grid in place over this one. I'm going to just view this so that I can see both of these. So I'll say Float All in Windows. I'm going to move this over a little bit so that I can see both flowers on my screen. I'm going to start on the left side of this one and move this over. I am going to select the first column here, copy, cut, go over here, go to my first column, paste. Again, it's sort of invisible, so I need to take my arrow and move that into the first column. So I could cut up my second image this way and do it one section at a time, or I could divide my second image the same way as my first. I have two ways of doing it. I'm going to choose to divide this second image up the same way I did the first, just so that I have a fallback rather than cut it all up and then find out that I might have missed a cut. So again, I'm going to pause this for a moment until I can show you that next stage. I'm going to do the exact same thing that I did for the first picture. I'm going to start by going to Image, Canvas Size. I'm going to double the width, leave the height alone. I'm going to move my anchor point to the left side in the center, and I'm going to have my canvas extension color white. I'm going to select this end piece that's not a full grid column and delete it. And then I'm going to clear that selection, use my marquee tool, select my first column here, Control C, Control X, Control V. This time, instead of putting it in the end space here, I'm going to move it over one section. Click back on my background layer, take the next column, Control C, Control X, Control V, move it over, leaving a space in between. And I'm going to continue this process until I've cut the entire flower area up. As you can see, I'm nearly finished with dividing this second picture up. I just have a couple more columns to do. Control C, Control X, Control V. Move my column over. Click on my background layer. Control C, Control X, Control V. Move it over. Alright, so now I have this second image divided up into layers. I'm going to rename my background layer to Layer 0 just by double-clicking on the name in the layer box. Let me do that again for you. Double-click the background layer and it becomes Layer 0. Say OK. Now I'm going to hold my Shift key down, click on the top layer. So now I've selected all of these layers, and I'm going to literally drag these layers, still holding my Shift key down, onto the other picture. I'm going to minimize my first picture here. Now move my layered box over. I'm going to use my arrow key to move those layers that I just pasted until I see them in the spaces in between my first flower. I want there to be no blank areas. Alright, this column over here, if you notice, is identical to this column. That's because this was the one that I pasted in to show you the other method, the one that I don't usually use. So I don't need this, I only need the ones that I just pasted in. So I'm going to take my marquee tool and I'm going to select the area that I want to keep. From here to here, I'm going to say Image Crop, and now deselect. Now I have an image that's ready to print out, fold up, and when I have folded it using a mountain valley fold technique, I will be able to see one image if I'm looking in one direction and the other image if I'm looking in the other direction. This concludes this part of the demonstration.